If you're a Warriors fan, you know that the last few seasons have been a roller coaster. Hope at the top when the Curry heats up, frustration at the bottom when the team collapses in the decisive moments. It seems that the board always wakes up too late, that the squad is never really ready to fight on equal terms with the great candidates for the title. And the feeling is that we are wasting the last prime years of the greatest player in the history of the franchise. But today the conversation is different. There's a giant announcement coming behind the scenes, and it could be exactly the turning point we've been asking for a long time. If you're tired of seeing the team repeat the same mistakes, seeing Curry carrying everything alone and feeling like you lack the courage to truly change, stay with me until the end of this video because I'll explain step by step what's about to happen, why this could change everything in the Warriors' future, and how this decision could finally put the franchise back on the path to competing for titles again. Before we dive into the details of this bombastic announcement, here's what you need to do. If you are real Warriors, take advantage now, while the video is still in its infancy, and subscribe to the channel. This takes 2 seconds. It's free and it makes all the difference so that you continue to receive everything that really matters about the behind the scenes of the franchise. Leave a like because this shows YouTube that this subject is important to fans and helps this content reach many more fans like you. And don't forget to activate the notification bell, because in the next few hours and days there may be big news, and you won't want to hear about it last. Now, seriously, if you're tired of finding out late about the Warriors, missing trade updates, injuries, or board decisions, this is the time to make sure you're always one step ahead. So subscribe, leave a like, activate the bell, and stay here with me, because from now on, we will unravel what is behind this massive announcement and what it really means for the future of the Steph Curry era. Every now and then, in sport, there comes a point where you can no longer pretend that small adjustments will solve everything. You can change the rotation, test different quintets, adjust the game plan here and there, but deep down, you know that this only keeps the team in an uncomfortable middle ground, neither bad enough to dismantle everything, nor good enough to seriously fight for the title. It is precisely in this dangerous place that many franchises get lost, because playing it safe seems more comfortable than facing reality head-on. This is exactly why the conversation surrounding the Golden State Warriors right now is so heavy. What is being discussed is not a common exchange. It is not a simple course correction. We are talking about a possible decision that changes the essence of the franchise, which could change the way the squad is constructed, which would probably require saying goodbye to players who marked an era and became recent symbols of the team. On the other hand, it could also be the last real chance to give Steph Curry another legitimate run for a 5th title before the clock on his career really starts to tick down. If you follow this type of analysis, you know that we are no longer in that scenario where the Warriors enter the court and the opponent trembles just looking at the shield. That inevitable team aura was in the past. Today, when we look at the table, we are no longer the main target of the big guys in the Western Conference. There is an obvious discomfort. The team is still competitive, still wins. There are still exciting nights. But there is no longer the feeling that, in a playoff, they will run over whoever appears in front of them. It's important to admit this honestly. Against average teams, the Golden State continues to dominate, especially when Curry is inspired and when the offensive system flows. But when the level rises, when the confrontation is against contenders like Oklahoma City, Denver, or a reinforced Lakers, it becomes clear that something is missing. Lack of weight. There's a lack of that kind of talent that single-handedly changes playoff series, that forces the other side to redesign their entire game plan. The franchise's standard requirement is not just to compete, is to compete for the title. This does not mean that the current squad is bad, nor that the work of the coaching staff is weak. On the contrary, the coach continues to be among the greatest minds in basketball. Curry still plays like one of the best in the world even at 36 years old. And there are interesting young people who from time to time let fans dream about the future. The problem is that in today's NBA, that's not enough to win a trophy. Teams that want to be champions cannot depend solely on a star and good supporting players. They need multiple stars, players capable of impacting the game at a high level in both attack and defense. When we look at the construction of champion teams in the last decade, it is clear that pure patience, that idea of let's just develop young people and wait for the window to arrive, has become a luxury for a small franchise. Teams with a global fan base, a strong market, and a generational star at their peak cannot hide behind long-term talk. Steph Curry time is now. Every season the team enters just to see what happens is one less season in which they are still capable of being the best player in a playoff series. That's why the internal discussion revolves around one word: aggressiveness. Be aggressive in the trade market. Be aggressive in evaluating who is truly untouchable. Be aggressive in recognizing that some beloved players may need to be wrapped up in larger packages if the payoff is truly transformative. When we talk about transformative talent, it is not a figure of speech. This is the type of player who changes the team's ceiling overnight, who redefines what the team can do on the court. And here comes the name at the center of all this speculation: Giannis Antetokounmpo. Two-time MVP, NBA champion, elite defender, still at his physical and technical peak. A player who has already proven that he can be the best on a championship team, and who, this season, is in the middle of a much more unstable context than Bucks fans imagined. The Milwaukee team does not meet expectations, doubts about the project increase, and Giannis's conversations with the board about the future begin to take on a different tone. Whenever a star this size shows any sign of uncertainty, the entire league pays attention. And it is natural that the Golden State appears among the most talked-about destinations. No matter how difficult it is to fit in financially, no matter how much there is emotional resistance, the idea of seeing Giannis alongside Curry is one that attracts the attention of analysts, managers, and, of course, fans, because basketballistically, it makes too much sense. Imagine, for a moment, what it would be like to face a duo made up of the greatest shooter in history and the most physically dominant player attacking the paint. Imagine Curry pulling two defenders 8-9 meters from the rim, opening up giant spaces for Giannis to attack at speed. Imagine Giannis protecting the rim with his wingspan and mobility, while Curry commands the attack with freedom and total focus on creating and finishing. It's a combination that recalls, in impact, the best moments of the Kevin Durant era, but with its own characteristics. But to reach this scenario, the path is neither simple nor painless. A recent projection, made by analysts who study in detail the financial and technical impact of major exchanges, designed a package that measures the size of the sacrifice required. In this vision, the Golden State would receive Giannis and his brother Thanasis, while Milwaukee would get Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, and 4 first-round picks between 2026 and 2032. It's not just any exchange. It is a gesture of rupture. It's admitting that the team is willing to dismantle part of its recent identity in the name of a new core around Curry and Giannis. And for the fan, the first point that matters is obvious: Draymond Green. He is not just a player. It is a symbol of an era, a way of playing, a culture. He was the defensive heart of every championship campaign, the loudest voice on the court, the personification of the team's competitiveness. Exchanging Draymond means ending a cycle, not only in technical terms, but emotionally. It is to say, with attitudes, that the franchise agrees to close the book on the old formation to open a new chapter. At the same time, it also means recognizing something that, at some point, would need to be faced. Time is unforgiving. Age arrives, availability fluctuates, intensity is no longer the same night after night. And if the idea is to make the most of the last years of Curry's elite, it may not be possible to keep the entire group that accompanied it here intact. The second package name, Jonathan Kuminga, represents another layer of difficulty. While Draymond symbolizes the recent past, Kuminga is what the fan looks at when he thinks about the future. Young, athletic, with clear potential for offensive and defensive evolution, he is the typical player that many franchises like to keep, precisely to be the basis of the next era. Giving up on him is accepting that tomorrow may not be an absolute priority when you have a living legend still in a position to decide championships today. And this is the great tension of the conversation. Kuminga could indeed become an all-star in a few years. But Curry doesn't have a few years left at the highest level. His window is measured in seasons. The question that needs to be answered coldly is, does it make sense to hold on to a promising young player, hoping he explodes in the future, while having the chance to bring in a player who is already one of the 5 best in the world, and who can now form the most dominant duo in the NBA alongside their star? Buddy Hield enters the equation in another way, more linked to the mechanics of exchanges and technical fit. He arrived to offer shooting, spacing, quick points, experience. It's the type of piece that any coach likes to have at his disposal to get through a long season. But when the mission is to facilitate the arrival of a superstar, it is often precisely these valuable players with relevant contracts who need to be included in the package for the numbers to add up. On the Milwaukee side, there is also the logic that if they really opt for a rebuild, veterans like Draymond and Buddy would probably be redirected later in parallel trades, yielding even more assets. Therefore, this type of negotiation tends to have an almost 3-team character, even when it is officially registered only between 2 franchises. It is a chain of movements in which each piece generates another. And of course, there are the 4 first-round picks. This is the type of currency that weighs heavily in discussions because it represents what has not yet begun to exist. These are young people who haven't even been drafted, future deals that haven't even been imagined yet. By sending these choices, the Golden State would be explicitly assuming that it prefers to bet all its chips on 2 or 3 years with a real chance of winning the title instead of saving abstract possibilities for 5 or 6 seasons from now. The central question then is, how much is it worth maximizing the present? How much is it worth trying, almost obsessively, to turn the last few Curry years into years of open war for the title, even if that means having fewer tools in the long run? The answer, for a franchise that has become accustomed to thinking big, is unlikely to be small. Obviously, all of this comes with risk. Giving up Draymond is losing a rare defensive brain, a respected voice, a fit that cannot be reconstructed overnight. Letting Kuminga go is accepting the possibility of seeing him blossom as a star elsewhere, while the fan wonders what could have been if he had stayed. Losing Buddy means giving up some of the perimeter spacing and firepower that the team took time to build. Furthermore, there is the theme of depth. Trading 3 rotation players for a superstar and a complement inevitably reduces the number of reliable pieces on the roster. It would require creativity from the board in the search for short contract veterans, specific bets, movements in the buyout market. It's a real challenge. But when we talk about the playoffs, it's worth remembering that the rotation naturally shrinks. The discussion stops being who is the 10th best in the cast and becomes who are the 3 or 4 who decide games. This is where the vision of Curry alongside Giannis gains traction. In a series of 7 games with preparation time, adjustments, and counter-adjustments, having 2 figures capable of dominating at different and complementary levels is a huge difference. On one side, a player who changes the geometry of the court with his shot. On the other, one who changes the game through physical imposition, rim protection, and constant presence in the paint. Defenders will have to choose which disaster they prefer to face. If the area is congested to contain Giannis, space opens up for Curry to punish from 3. If the defense stretches to mark the perimeter, Giannis finds a free path to attack the basket. Each night, the opponent would have to decide which poison to take. Few teams today have a consistent answer for a single player at that level. Balancing marking against both at the same time borders on impossible. On the other side of the court, the impact would also be profound. Giannis would bring back a sense of rim protection and defensive versatility that the Golden State hasn't experienced since Durant's days, with all the differences in style between the two. His ability to exchange markings, cover spaces, contest shots, and still participate in the counterattack would reinforce an identity that was part of the franchise's best moments: strong defense, quick transition, and creative attack. Of course, this is all still discussion, scenario, projection, but it is precisely at these crossroads that the history of a franchise is written. Staying the way you are is more comfortable at first sight because it avoids criticism, avoids goodbyes, avoids the feeling of risk. However, in practice, it can also mean accepting mid-table seasons, the occasional playoff campaign without a real threat to the top, and the feeling that the team saw the last years of greatness of one of the greatest players in its history pass without reacting. Going for a movement of this size is sending a different message, is to say to the fans, to the league, and to Curry himself, we are not going to passively watch the end of this era, is to live up to the standard that the Golden State itself helped to establish Eker when it decided to be more than just a competitive team, is to assume that if there is a real chance of forming a duo at a historic level, it deserves to be considered extremely seriously, even if the price is high. In the end, the big question for you, the fan, is simple to formulate and difficult to answer. Are you willing to see the Golden State go to the limit to try to get back to the top, even if it costs names that you learn to admire and draft picks that could be the future? Or would you prefer to keep everything as it is, embracing a safer path, but with much less chance of seeing Curry lift another trophy? While this discussion continues to gain ground, the only certainty is that decisions like this don't come up every day. And if you want to follow every development, every serious rumor, every in-depth analysis about what this possible exchange would mean on the court and behind the scenes, it's worth staying close. Because if this scenario progresses, we will be talking about one of the most striking movements in the recent history of the Golden State Warriors, for better or for worse. And that is precisely why this moment can be a watershed. Either the Golden State chooses to face reality, take the risk, and try something truly great, or it accepts living in memory of what it once was, while watching other franchises occupy the space that was once its. There is no perfect path, there is no guarantee, but there is a huge difference between going down fighting for another title and simply letting time take Steph Curry's last big phase without a worthy reaction. If you've made it this far, it's because you really care about the future of the Warriors. So now, the ball is in your court. Do you want to follow every step of this possible revolution, understand before everyone else what is being discussed behind the scenes, which scenarios are real and which are pure smoke? When this type of negotiation heats up, information changes from one day to the next, and anyone who isn't aware is left behind. So, as soon as you finish this video, scroll down to the pinned comment and click on the Golden State Warriors News Today playlist. There I focus all the analysis, updates, serious rumors, and in-depth reading about what could redefine the last few years of the Curry era. If you want to always be one step ahead, this is the place you need to be. So do the following. Make sure you like this video so that this type of content continues to reach you, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss any of the next chapters of this giant soap opera, and most importantly, go straight to the Golden State Warriors News Today playlist in the pinned comment. Because if the bomb really does go off and the Golden State takes this historic step, you won't want to hear this story anywhere else.